And welcome back to Barry's Poetic Session, the relationship show. I'm your host, Barry, a.k.a. The Dark Knight. And on my far left is the tantalizing, titillating, terrific, love of my life, Takalani. And the brother from another mother on the other side, we have Brother Black. And the artistic, the fantastic musician, artist, sculptor, the creative Roy. Doing it up. And our topic today, would you date a person with children? Would you marry a person with children? And who would like to go first?
Well, I guess I'll take it up. So I would say probably not, particularly if you're talking about a certain point in my life. So like prior to dating and marrying you, I had either a no kid policy or you could have kids, but we wasn't getting serious, that type of thing. And the reason why is because it was the thing about the fresh babies. So fresh babies to me are kids under 5. I feel like in that time period, he still want to hit the baby mom, right? And so I'm not dealing with all that drama around that. And, what if, I'm the new woman and me and the kid getting along, she get jealous because I'm cool with the kid or whatever. Like, I wasn't down for all of that. Like, no, them fresh babies, that's suspect. And so, like...
I'm tripping off the fresh babies part.
Them babies be fresh, like...
No, it's just the way you're saying it, because I'm thinking like a restaurant menu.
That's what I'm thinking.
I want a slush.
Look, you're not Democrats. We ain't on no conspiracy theory. We ain't
fresh baby.
Hey, like it might still be a little piece of placenta on their head. I'm not.
Oh man, come on. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just tripping about fresh baby. Price tag's still low. Go right ahead.
And so, I felt like in the situation with fresh babies, if they were not having sex, it was because baby mama didn't want to. But I felt like if she wanted to, he like, all right, I take it.
Okay.
Our baby mama. So, all right. Like, not even if, it didn't necessarily mean that he wants to be with her, but I'm not trying to be in the middle of all of that stuff. Now, I had a fresh baby when my husband and I started dating. Real fresh baby. Charlie was actually a year old when we went on our first date. Like, he had been one for like a week or two. No, a few weeks actually. And so in that situation, and yes, I'm about to state a double standard here. Don't care, be mad, but it was different because I knew that I had control of that situation. I knew I wasn't trying to be the baby mama that could occasionally get hit because I had the fresh baby. So my thing was, it's like, okay, if the dude okay with that, maybe. But I kind of didn't even want to date. I had kind of accepted that I wasn't even gonna date anybody until my son was grown. Because I mean, to me, you a serial killer or a murderer around my kids until I feel otherwise. I just make the assumption that you crazy and you'll hurt my kids. And then if I'm convinced later on that you're not, then I might trust you with my kids. But I am not, like, I'm very, very, very guarded about who comes around my child and now children. So I didn't really feel like the complication, all that. Like, I got to see if, I even think this guy can be around my child. Like, what if this person is abusive to me or to the child? What if they one of these people that talk real good, you marry them, and then they turn into this monster because they got you now? So, yeah, children, I felt complicated the situation to a level that I was not prepared for and quite honestly not mature enough to deal with.
Like different. All right.
Hey, God, I ain't got no babies
Well,
that I know of.
what?
Uh-oh.
Well,
Let's
'cause
dig into that.
okay, but see, I can say that. I can say that because the women that I've dated and been with, trust me, if I had a child by them, oh, they would make sure it was known. They would make sure that I would take care of my responsibility.
All right.
Not to mention I would.
Oh, of course you was in. Yeah. You take responsibility for kids, it ain't yours. So he's our two sons' godfather. So
Chicago.
Ryan, what's up? I'm gonna beat you at WWE, Charlie. One day.
Coming soon.
One day.
we'll announce it on the show when it happened.
That's right.
In the year 3000.
So,
Yes.
I have a question for our host.
Yes.
Would you date or marry a person who already has children? Do you have any particular story that might tell us about your inclinations?
I would say before I was 30, I had a no kid policy. And then when I got to 40, I was like, can I even find somebody that? So when between 30 and 40, I navigated pretty well. No kids. But by the time I hit 40, I had to make a decision. Do I want to date young enough where they don't have kids and have that conversation with them? Which is, after you get about 10 years difference, your conversation with the person that's 10 years younger is a little different. And my mind had to be right with that. And I said, can I deal with that? So before I started dating my wife, who happened to have one small child under 5,
He wasn't even one yet when y'all met.
I met you prior to that.
Okay.
So I knew you ahead of time, so that helped a lot. Because if I had, so prior to that, I was at the age, I was over 40 and I was dating, I wasn't finding anybody who didn't have kids, or if they did, their kids were grown and they weren't having anymore. So I had to make a decision. Do I want to have kids? And if so, then I need to date people of childbearing age. But I can't go too low because my brain hurts talking to them if they're too young. So I had to find a mature mid-30s or above who wants to still have kids, whether they have kids already or not. I wanted to have a kid of my bloodline. So I had to make a decision. And so I was like, well, I'll wait. But somebody didn't want to wait. Like, look, I like you now. You want to come over for movie night? I'm like, who else is coming? Mad as hell. Like, what do you mean, who else is coming?
You was good and well. I was asking you on a date.
I did not, but that's her story. So I was like, okay. And then I knew she had a young child. And I didn't say, do you have a babysitter? I said, since it's a movie night, I had an extra DVD player and some DVDs with cartoons. Said, you want me to bring those over and see if he likes any of these cartoons? And that got her. I didn't try to send the baby away or anything like that. And so I was just being considerate from how I grew up. It's not easy to have babysitters. I know when growing up, my parents, my mom wanted to have a babysitter for my sister and I. And my sister was, when she was under 5, we couldn't buy a babysitter without somebody kicking and screaming and taking that for a whole 6 or how many hours that she was going to be kept. So I sympathized with Tiffany's position at the time. So I said, okay, I'm not going to put her in that situation because that's stressful. Like, okay, then I have to leave my baby, separation anxiety. Is the baby ever going to feel comforted and all that good stuff? And so I didn't even put her in that situation. But I made a decision at that point. If I want to have kids, I'm probably going to have to go with somebody who has kids. And it didn't matter how old, as long as they were willing to have someone with me if they wanted.
So one thing that was very important to me was you not trying to separate us, because that was the one thing that, because I had actually made the decision that I wasn't going to date while he was a minor, for that specific reason. I'm like, people crazy. I don't know. I ain't want nobody. Like, when it comes to my kids, everybody is a serial killer and a molester until I just feel comfortable that you ain't. Like, it's like I just take at face value that you're somebody that will hurt my child. And then if you show me enough reasons for me to believe that you won't, then I start opening up a little bit. But I'm super, super protective of my kids. And I was even more so with Charlie because it was just me and him in the beginning.
And your first one.
And my first baby. So I'm like, I ain't gonna just have any old body around my child. I wasn't really looking to date. But Barry, he got to me. And I knew him.
I just talked to her.
I knew him previously, and I knew that he dated somebody with a child, and he was very good with the child. So I knew that he had the propensity to be a father figure, and eventually the father. And so I got comfortable enough, but I was very much prepared to not date at all, just to not have the complication of worrying about, can I trust this person around my son?
Yeah.
I think that's key. So if you're a man and you don't have any children, but you're dating somebody, one, you have to be able to plan. You have to learn that you're going to have to plan your dates. That includes that child. There are going to be dates that you're going to have separate, but if you're going to get serious, then you have to plan some dates where you both, you, the child, and the woman you're dating are going to be there. She has to see how you interact with her child. Okay, and you can't fake the funk with children. They are very literal, and they have no filter.
Yeah.
So if there's something that they don't like, they're gonna say it. If they're not comfortable with that person, they're gonna let the mother know. Sometimes they'll let you know right there with the mother, but they're gonna let you know. So you have to have some patience and be able to pay attention to what's going on. So if you are not good with children, then its consideration should be, I'm not dating somebody with a child.
Yeah.
But if you have patience,
I said I wasn't good with kids. I'm dropping them.
yeah. But we've seen how you interacted with kids, and it's totally opposite. He actually does work well with children. So, and I'll give you an example of working well with children. I once dated a lady. I guess the second time I was over her house during the daytime, and she had a nephew that called her mommy because she had adopted him. And so we were in the living room, and I was just watching them play while she was getting stuff together. And he and his friend, they were playing, and they were on the ground acting like they were puppies or whatever. And then they bumped heads, and being boy, it's kind of a hard knock, right? And so he started crying. The other kid was like shocked, and he ran away. And he was sitting there crying. I said, oh, well, come here. And so I kind of picked him up because he wasn't injured, at least not that I could tell. I said, wait, let me see something right here. Oh, I think you're going to be all right here. Let's just watch a couple of cartoons or whatever. And he stopped crying, and we got to know each other a little bit. And so that's working with children. Somebody else would be like, oh, man, up, da, 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 da. Well,
Right.
the kid is, under 10 years old. You have to be a little bit more, different in that. You don't want to over pamper them, but at the same time, they might just be crying just to get a little attention.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have to learn to give them some attention in between the two. But that's how it worked out. So.
Or you didn't have a Band-Aid, but like, put it on the head.
But you have to be able to, work. And then there's some kids, the other issue is how well do they get along with their father? So older boys will be like, I don't want you replacing my mom,
Yeah.
I don't want you replacing my dad, and you're not there to replace the dad. But you want to let the kid, know, well, I'm going to be in mommy's life too. That does not mean that you no longer have to choose between me and your dad.
Sometimes you might have to tell the dad that as well.
You might have to, right? Yeah, because if you're working well, he might get a little jealous.
Yeah.
And the kids can sense that too.
Right.
I'm going to play you against my dad.
Yeah.
And some kids are good at it. They get paid. Like, where you get that PlayStation 5 from? I thought you couldn't even get them. Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? So, again, and then some kids, it's not even about whether the father's there. There is such thing as an Oedipus complex and an Electra complex.
Yeah.
And when it comes to boys, they do, have an Oedipus complex. They don't even know why. They just know that they want all their attention from their mom. If you're dating a mother with girls, then the Electra complex comes in because she wants your attention as a father, And so then you have to learn not to let the little girl play you against, your lady you're dating, one way or the other. So, it's a very emotional intelligence. Yeah, exactly. You have to have that emotional intelligence to know how to work that.
Yeah. What are you doing?
So my advice is going to start off with when you are interested in somebody and you find out they have kids, you have to have the conversation with yourself first about like, how far do you want to take this? Are you looking for a permanent commitment or are you just looking for a fun time? And make sure you have that conversation. It is my experience. It is easier for you to find a person who has children if you just want to have fun time, because fun time allows you to fit into their life when they need you to. They can coordinate things, because a person who is taking like sole ownership of their children or managing that, they have their life set. You are this other rogue element that are coming in, asking them, do they have a Saturday off? Like, they've had that Saturday planned for the last 3 months because they've had to. And here you are coming like, oh, I got this Saturday. Let's go do this thing. And they'll be like, no, that's not for fun time. That's for nap time. Like, that's what it is. And so you have to have that conversation with yourself first about what you want, and then you have the conversation with them about what it is that they need. Sometimes these roles can change. You could start off looking for something serious, and it becomes more about just like someone on the side kind of feeling. So that's one thing to keep in mind, just about dating someone who already has children, just in general. Now, after that, they, of course, get to set the pace. The person with the children, they will determine whether or not who you're going to meet or if you're ever going to meet. And if that's even going to change, that's fine. The idea that, taking it back to more of my own personal experience, when I was a teenager, there were girls already dropping babies. And I said to myself, well, I'm not going to date one of them because I wanted to have my own family. Very chauvinistic, very patriarchal. It's not the standard that I suggest for anybody, but that was like the mentality that I have, was this idea that like, I don't want to mess with them. And because I was like, I don't want to take care of this other person's baby. I don't want to have to raise these people. And all that stuff just didn't make any sense to me. And but then when I went into college, when I was college age, that changed really quickly. I was totally fine pursuing and talking with some women who had children already. These were women that were in college. So they had that mentality and the wherewithals and the capabilities to actually take on college and pursue that. So they had different priorities that were looking for this kind of longer term thing. None of them worked out beyond the initial talking to. Some of them they were young with young children, and they probably had some unrealistic ideas about how to integrate another person into their life as well. So that's a precarious situation. Then when I got older, I had my own issues that I needed to work on. That like I liked kids. I liked playing with them, liked being around them, giving them advice and all the rest of that stuff. But I have my own history and problems that I had to overcome with my own childhood. And so even though I had this idea that I was going to have children much earlier than now, I had to go to therapy, had to go to support groups, had to go to these other things and work on myself so that I had a better understanding that I wasn't trying to live my second life through my kids, wasn't trying to make them into what I never was kind of stuff. And I could just also just for the healthiness of myself, just so that I can be better. And I'm, as noted, once you get past a certain age, finding a partner who doesn't have kids becomes very rare. You'll find out they're good people. You find out that they're interesting. You find out that they're still funny. And like, oh, and I have 2 kids. Oh, I have 5 kids. Oh, I have 3 kids. Like,
I don't want no more.
right. Well, that's the next part about it as well, is that there's a space when you're around that age where they're debating about whether or not to have any more. But usually at another age range, the people who have children, and I keep saying people, I know we want to say like women who have children. I'm talking about people who have children who actually take care of their children or are part of their children's life. They have already decided that this is the life that they have. Their kids are already teenagers or they're already 10-year-olds and they're just like, they don't want to do it again. Or maybe they're like, they want to do it again. And that's a conversation you have to deliberately have with someone. But the older they get, the less likely they are interested in starting that whole process over. So if that becomes a rarity to find someone like that too. These are all conversations you have to have up front. You have to be aware of with yourself about what kind of relationship you want, if it's just something on the side, or look for the bigger commitment, find out what kind of models they have for parenting, because you get to observe that. You can't come in and be that wrecking ball and say like, we're all going to go to church now in a house full of atheists. Can't do that. You got to have that. And then also you talk about the competitions that come into it, the competitions with the other parent, the competition with the kid's attention, and the competition of giving the kids direction. Because it's a weird situation when you're a grown person and a 5-year-old can run over you because you're like, I can't correct, chastise, put boundaries up for this 5-year-old because I haven't had the conversation with the parent. So like, it's complicated, but it's not so complicated that it shouldn't be approached, because people get babies. That's what we do, on purpose and accident.
That's called life, right? Well, we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we will talk about if you get married, how do you co-parent, or do you? And we'll get the thoughts right after this on Barry's Poetic Session, the relationship show. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, E, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. That's the alphabet to me. Won't you sing along with me? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. That's the alphabet to me. Can't you see? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, HIJKLMNOPQRSTUVWXYZ. And now back to Barry's Poetic Session, the relationship show. The question: how do you co-parent in these scenarios when you have these children that are not yours?
So one of the things that I think is important is the other parent in the picture? And if so, how much are they in the picture? So for instance, if you have I'll just use myself as an example. If the child's father was very much in, his child's life, taking them on weekends during the summer, all that type of stuff, like the real hardcore, I'm with my child type of situation, then the co-parenting situation would look different when you are married to another person or seriously dating another person. If they're not in the picture, fuck them. I mean, sorry, but like, if you wasn't there, don't try to be there now that I'm dating somebody. Like, you had the opportunity to do that. That's just my general attitude. And also, I think it would depend on what the child wants as far as the relationship with that parent, especially in the situation of an absentee parent, because it's like they have to get to know this person. They have to, figure out if this is what they want. And if they do, then that impacts the whole relationship. What does that new relationship look like where we're allowing this person, I shouldn't say allow. I feel funny about that word, but where this person is welcomed into the relationship, because the reality is if you are co-parenting, y'all all in a relationship. Y'all all might not be fucking, but y'all all in this relationship because you have to center on that child. So are you up for that? Are you cool with that? What's the relationship prior? What's the relationship afterwards? All that stuff kind of comes into play. And so in our situation, Charlie's biological father was not in his life. And so I guess it made things less complicated for you and him to establish a relationship. And particularly because he was only a year old. So, you don't have, it would be different if he was like 15 and, you coming in, he's already got his life established, and then, you pop up. But I think it's a little different when the child is that young, because there's so much unfertile ground to cover. And so I think it also depends on the age of the child, what that looks like. What will the co-parenting look like? If the biological father was absentee and the child is 15, and now he also has this new person coming in that's going to be married to mom, like that could cause all kinds of like adjustment issues for the child. So yeah, I think that's something that could be answered all over the place. When it comes to co-parenting in a situation where colloquially people call them outside kids, but particularly children that have resulted from an affair, and you decide to stay together. But the person also, whoever had the affair, also wants to keep that child and co-parent. That, ooh, man, I have seen some examples of that, and I can't say that I've seen a situation where that wasn't messy.
Well, I was going to say, legally in Ohio, if you guys are married and a child comes, it doesn't matter
That's your child.
who the original father is. It's the married person's responsibility.
Yeah. But it still doesn't take away of course, legally they ain't worried about your emotions. But, emotionally speaking, psychologically speaking, it's going to be rough on everybody for a minute there. And the one thing that I find the saddest about those situations is, because I've seen it in a situation where the child was like 5 and where the child was like in her 40s, and just starting to get a relationship with her father and his wife being there. And, so it in both situations, it was complicated, but I think it was, the one thing that I noticed with the person who was the adult child is that she seemed to, of course, since she's older, she had a real sense of guilt and didn't really know what to do with that, even though it wasn't her fault that she was created. When she would look at his wife, it's like, I could see in her face, it kind of seemed like she wanted to apologize for even existing. And I think that's a horrible thing for a person to feel. But at the same time, you can't fault the wife for being upset that this occurred. So how do you move on from that? How do you co-parent in that situation? In the situation where the child was young, he co-parented with the mother and his wife just stayed out of it. And that's their baby. But the child would come over and play with their kids. And the whole time she would be stressed out, but she was very concerned about how she was treating the child because she realized it wasn't the child's fault, but she was in a situation that she didn't like. And so, what do you do? If y'all were in these situations, any of these scenarios, I kind of wonder what the rest of the panel would think.
There's going to be trauma associated with someone who you're committed to and you find out that they've been unfaithful. And many people have this vision of trauma and apologies and forgiveness as being this finish line that a person crosses.
Yeah.
That you're just like, you were having an outside affair, you got a kid from them and all the rest of stuff. I forgive you. I accept it. That's not the way that it works. To be more specific, if you stole my bike and then when I busted you, you gave me back my bike, I could forgive you. I now have my bike. Everything is fine. But the part about the trauma is if you stole my bike, you kept my bike, every time I would see you with my bike, it would reignite those feelings. I could have forgiven you Tuesday, but Friday I see you riding the bike again. I got to do that process again. And so that's one of the things that comes up with that. And it's a bad situation to be in. But what I wanted to bring up, which I think you were saying, but I'm probably just packaging it up. If the relationship of the biological parents is complicated, your introduction into that is just going to be a mess. So those parents that are involved have to have established their own rules and standards before you can really plug in. Otherwise, you're going to get these things about jealousy, about this idea that this kid belongs to me, you can't touch them. Or if it's one that you thought was uncomplicated because you're like, they're out of their life, they might decide to barge in and start fiddling with the wires, try to mess some stuff up because they're like, I have claim to this child. And they just do it to try and extract something out of you, whether that's money, whether that's just your attention, because that's another thing that people just try to control. And so having to establish and maintain those rules and standards of that complicated relationship, that's what's really going to be the thing that you have to identify when you are dating somebody is just, and it's a weird conversation to have. Like just sitting down across the table from someone who's a parent, be like, how complicated is your relationship with your baby mom and dad or whatever? And like have them tell you that. It's a weird spot for them too, because for them to tell you that it is complicated, would you think that's a red flag? You'd be like, oh, well, they can't handle this particular situation. But really, that's the conversation that needs to happen, and it's hard to get to that trust level so that you can go through it. Because I come from a blended family, and marriages and remarriages have happened throughout. I think from all of my 9 siblings, 2 of them have been only married once. Or no, I take that back. We're up to 3, and actually they aren't even married because they're blended and all the rest of stuff. It's just like It's a standard in our day and age that you don't have to stay in a relationship that's not working. You don't. But it can leave something complicated that has to be addressed, talked about. And yeah, it's a weird level of shame that someone can feel that they're in a complicated relationship and they can't share it because it reflects badly on them, when the truth is just the truth.
And I think another thing that I would like to add is, particularly as a single mom, it's like there is this view of women, particularly Black women, of, you're a single mom because you did something wrong. This is your fault that the father is not in the child's life. And that's something else that you kind of grapple with in dating, because you worry about being judged because of that. So before you even get somebody's number or anything like that, you kind of have that baggage of, is this person gonna look down on me because I'm a single mom? Are men going to think, oh, well, I'ma just try to fuck her because I ain't really trying to wife her because she done lost this one man, supposedly lost. They don't even take into account that.
Or I can spread my seed. She's easy to spread my seed to.
You know what? And I think that's a very insulting attitude for certain men. Well, I'm not going to say certain men, for certain males they have. I do believe there's a difference between males and boys and men. Because the reality is, no matter how you feel about this woman that has your child, I would think, because I don't have it, but I would think I would always want to know what's going on with my child. I don't care how I might feel about the mother. I might hate you. I might not. I might be indifferent. But that's a piece of me, for lack of a better word. And I want to know, so you're dating somebody, and this is where the complication comes in, because you're dating somebody. I know that we don't have a relationship, but I need to know how my child is being treated with that person as a man, because I guarantee you, that's how women think. Okay. Oh, you're seeing somebody else and you want to take, my child with you. She's going to be with you. I want to know what she's like, or how she's like, or how they're interacting. It's easier for a man or a male to get away with that, because when she has the child, that's it. You're with. If I'm not there, I'm not there. I might have planted the seed, but I didn't carry the fruit for however many months and how much labor or pain, And I'm going to move about my merry way. The women don't have that option. They're carrying a child. There's an emotional attachment. Even if they put it up for adoption, there's an emotional attachment. So that child is with them. And so I would think.
Just unrelated related to the topic, but not necessarily. I do want to point out that because of that same premise, where a man can go out and get pregnant and she has to go through all the rest of the stuff, women have the right to choose to keep the child. Men, if she decides to terminate the pregnancy, that's her business. You can ask, you can beg, you could plead, you could try to work it out, but it's not your decision. And exactly that same reason, the amount of our society has been set up in this system of patriarchy, where we presume the woman is going to be the caretaker forever for this child. And if a man was really going to be like, oh, okay, I'm absolutely positive if you go through all this stuff where it changes her body permanently and you give me the child, I'm going to take care of it. You are going to be free to live the rest of your life as you were, and they were going to be held to that. I could understand a slightly better argument, but we men literally set up the system that tells women that they're supposed to take care of the children that we put into them. No, they get the choice. As heartbreaking as it may be for the man who wanted to have a child, they get the choice. But also, one of the reasons why they get the choice is the idea that you were talking about, how you want to have, you want to know where your child's at and who they're with. Many people, whatever gender you are, many people may leverage that, not to control the child, but to control the other parent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a whole different thing, going back to the complicated stuff. I've known a few people who were who had children with narcissistic, abusive people. And one of the things that I had a hard time dealing with was knowing that this parent who thought that their spouse, their ex, was mean to them but good to their kids. Now that they aren't. That you can't have an example of a good relationship when they're being mean to you, and then the kids go over there. Like, how is that? Sorry, different topic, but like.
No, I think that's important to bring up, because it's like if you are going to be in a co-parenting situation and you have something like this, the parent has trauma, the parent that's in the house, the parent outside of the house, maybe they were abusive because they didn't deal with their trauma. And then you coming in, right? And you're adding to this equation. Are you going to be a plus or a minus? We don't know. And so I think that's very appropriate in this conversation. Like, what do you do? And it sounds like, in this hypothetical scenario where the person is like, oh, well, they were abusive to me, but they weren't abusive to my kids. One, me personally, I feel like if you are abusing the parent, you are automatically abusing those children, because they are watching that, they are absorbing that, they are traumatized by that. And so ain't no way you can be a good father and be an abusive spouse.
You modeled it.
Yeah, and ain't no way. So I would like to go on record today saying that shit ain't possible.
So I believe that children are both intuitive and empathetic. And if you're abusing that mother or that father, they feel what's happening to their parent that has been taking care of them all this time. And they're going to express it one way or the other to where that person that's abusive to the parent, it's going to come out some kind of way that they're going to want to be abusive and authoritative over that child. I might be wrong. I've never seen that situation in observing other people in my life where a lot of times if the person is quote unquote good to the child but abusive to the mother, it's a love bond. It's like, see, I got these children right here with me. Then once they've got that separation, you said using the child as a tool, okay? Yeah. Then it's going to blow up in that fashion. So I've just never seen that.
What I've seen as well is a person who was abused co-parenting with this person who was narcissistic and abusive, which they recognize as, but they're good for the kids. I've seen that kid come home and run over that parent because, again, we're talking about modeling. This child saw the way that the other parent interacted with that one. And when they are away, that parent encourages, emboldens, justifies that action. And because they had not gone through the proper therapy and all the rest of that stuff, that never gets addressed. And they end up with a child that becomes a bully, becomes abusive because they see how it works. But then also, because of laws that we have here, is that if you see that developing in your child and you're like, I need to send my child to therapy, the other parent can prevent that. Yeah. Now, just in case one of the few women who I have talked to who've had that experience, it's not necessarily you. There's multiple women, so don't feel too bad. Or maybe it is you. You got to refigure. I'm not going to get it. You can call me. I'll tell you. But that's part of the thing is that the modeling of that behavior, and then you walk in, and when you walk in, talking strictly from my cishet experience, so I'm going to give some genders here. So I walk in, I'm talking to this woman, and I find out the relationship that she had with her ex, and I try to encourage her to be like, hey, you got to work on this, you got to set up some boundaries, you got to do this other kind of stuff, because I can't take this further knowing this is going on, because if we get anywhere and your child comes back and treats you the way I see them treating you, I am going to step into that.
Right.
And I know that if I step into that and your ex is still out there, this is going to be a mess because you never got the therapy and the boundaries and all the rest of that stuff. You're going to waver trying to find a way to compromise between the two, and basically setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. It's nothing. None of this is going to work out until you get that dynamic worked out, because your child turns out to be a bully. A child turned out to be a bully. But anyway.
And do you?
Or it
I'm
could-
sorry.
No.
I was just going to say, or it could be where the child acts like the parent to the abused parent. And could be another thing that you see.
You got a bunch of different dynamics. You got that. You also have the child being abused. You have the child being abusive towards. You have the child just having this split personality, like kind of setup, where they at home they're this way, but at the other one they're completely the other way, and they just have this dichotomy of self.
Like code switch, basically, for the child's development to survive their situation.
And even worse, child then learns that maybe this is the way it is, or this is how a relationship is, and then they accept what's being done to them, a cycle that's not being broken. So, like you said, it's a whole nother dynamic.
And until they learn, a child doesn't know any different. So it's normal until they know it's not.
They survive, and so then you get those tools to survive, and some of those tools that you get to survive get you through it, but they aren't useful in the long term. And you might be 20 when you realize it. You might be 50 when you realize it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a trip. So finding out the dynamics of the relationship, of the person that you're getting involved with, who has children, is very important if you're going to have a longer term commitment. That's simple. I've also had to find out from someone else that I dated that they were like, well, my ex is kind of psycho, that whole thing. And he tried to run us off the road while we were driving somewhere, threatened to come over and all this other kind of stuff. So, like,
That was life or death.
right.
Yeah.
He was.
And
That wasn't just an annoyance.
And that's right. And that's, restraining orders don't mean anything when you have somebody dedicated to someone's demise. So you can do all the things, but when you have an abusive situation and the break up, that individual that broke up with him is now in the most vulnerable state, because that's when they're more likely to be not just abused, but killed.
Yeah, statistically speaking, that's when the murders occur, when the woman has tried to leave
And move on.
and move on. Yeah. And I would venture to say that could be a reason why many women stay in these relationships, because they know it's a death sentence to leave.
It's a
Or they feel it. Yeah.
it's a threat that hangs over their head.
Yeah.
And then that person also uses that like, well, if I can't get to you, I'll get to your kid, or they were like, I'll get to the person whom you think you're moving on with.
Yeah.
So
And that's something that you definitely have to consider in co-parenting. Like what type of scenarios would I get into if, and the thing is, you may not know in the beginning, like this person may be cool, but then they might be like kind of mad, that the person is, like, they're like, dang, you really happy with this person? Like, you wasn't happy with me? And then it's like, oh, then that ugliness starts coming out. Like, it was cool because we had things established when everybody was single, and then people start dating, and then it's a whole different scenario.
Most likely, when you dig into it, the person was abusive to begin with, and when they were still single, they were still abusing it.
Yeah.
And once they found out that they had this opportunity to break free in a more complete way, they decide to exercise what powers they have. So with that, men, get fucking therapy.
Please.
God damn it, just go get some therapy.
Get it.
And also, I mean, we need to get some therapy. There's nothing about being ghetto strong without therapy. Therapy costs money. I ain't gonna play it down, but like,
Yeah.
come on, we got to do better.
Hey, Dr. Stewart is on the way.
That's right. That's right. So before we end this, I was going to say, did anyone else have any other things they wanted to talk about in terms of dating with children or getting married with children? Because I guess we didn't even talk about the stepchild situation and whether the people are underage or adults. If the children like you or dislike you makes a big difference in the marriage.
As a child from a blended family, my father had a marriage before my mother, and then had a marriage after that, all of them producing children. And without getting too much into it, my father had tried his best to not abandon or disown any of his children from his previous relationships. I knew I had steps, and I knew who they were, and I would see them with some frequency, and kind of like cousins or so. But the first mother, the impression that I get right now was that they worked on this co-parenting all together, because she's still around. I know her. She's kind of like an aunt to me, kind of thing like that. Like, so she's still around, involved with other people in the thing in their life. But my mother did not want part of that, and I can't really speak too much of her motivations, because that's not a conversation I had with her before she was gone. But for the most part, she felt us children had a right to know our steps, but she didn't. Yeah, it's complicated, and it was weird to put like me and my immediate sibling in that situation, because that disconnect from the family 1 and family 3 seem like they're closer than family 2, because we don't have that space. So yeah, it's a complicated conversation. And when you have someone who's not participating in good faith, it leaves a lot.
I think when it comes to steps, so my exposure to steps, my mom and my dad met when I was 2. My biological father was not in my life. I didn't even meet him till I was almost 4 years old. And so that's who I knew. That was my daddy. And to this day, he's been gone for 13 years, and that is my daddy. I do not stand for nobody calling him step nothing. I feel the same way about my husband with our oldest son, because there was a situation where someone called him step, and I was pissed. Because first of all, legally, that ain't even true, because he adopted him. And secondly, I felt like it was a slight. It was like a flex. Like, let me show you that you not real or some shit. So it pissed me off. I refrained because Barry said, it's not what they call me, it's what I answer to. And I remember this TV show that reminded me of his relationship with our oldest son. And this woman had an ex-husband, and she had 2 children, and she had a new boyfriend. And the boyfriend was really good with the kids and all that. And so the ex comes around, he's like, hey, I'm their father. And he was like, I don't need the title, I just want the job. And I was like, I love that. Because that's the thing. It's like, you can have all this flex of, I'm this person and I'm that person. it don't matter who's doing the job, who's been there. And I think that's important. Also, when it comes to steps, I think in my utopia of these blended families would be exactly like you described. Was it your father's first wife?
First.
And how you said she's like an aunt to you. Like, I love that. I love that there is that relationship there. It's like she obviously understands she's not your mom and not trying to take that role, but at the same time is trying to make sure that she's important to you. And I think that's beautiful. And I wish that all of our families had that, and all parts of our families had that. Like, it's just such a beautiful, mature way to be. But I know that's, it's not always the reality, and I think we have to face that. So, and Barry, I think it's important for you to kind of jump in on this conversation, seeing as you are in that position, how even though we don't know, what I'm talking about.
I'm just saying
Ain't no step here, but you know what I'm saying, since we're talking about this.
So I would just say that, I made a decision early on when I started to date. Do I want to be in the person's life or not? And then am I going to be committed to the person I'm dating, and being committed to the person, committed to that whole person. The whole person, if they have kids, that's part of that person. And that's how I viewed it. So it wasn't even a matter of anything other than, so when Charlie got sick and earlier on of us dating, it's like, sure, I'll go to the doctor with you because you're going to be hurting, and I'm going to be there to support you and your child right then. And that's how I viewed it. It wasn't a matter of, that's not my kid, I'm not going to get involved. I am now in, not part of the family, but I'm part of your network and your support system, and I'm going to be there for you and for who needs me at the moment. And that's how I view it.
That's why I love you so much.
Mm-hmm. So, I guess another dynamic you got to think about too is what is the condition of the child? Because, like I said, children can bring a whole set of problems, and you commit to it. I'm going to kind of a tangent. What if that child has physical disabilities or mental or emotional disabilities? Are you willing to support that or supporting that mother? And the reason why I say that, because when that part of it, that is the dynamic that takes a lot of the time for the mother. If you're going to be a part of, like you said, committing to the mother means committing to the child because it's the whole part of the child, then are you willing to commit with the support of that aspect of the child? If you're not, don't.
Well, I was just going to say the other part that you may have mentioned, I was going to say is it's not the problem of the child, it's the problem of the situation and that the child and the family are in. And I'm just clarifying. Okay. It's not not child creating problems. It's the child being within the situation and the family being in the situation.
But like I said, you got to support
But you got to support that or make a decision. Do you want to be a part of that? So, some people are like, I don't even want to take care of myself. I'm not taking care of no kids. And then that's fair. But you need to make sure that that's
the first sign for the women. You don't want to be with this person. If they can't take care of themselves, how can they take care of anybody else? Point blank.
I don't know. I kind of, and this is just some triggering stuff for me because it's like, okay, well, you knew all this stuff. You knew all that. So it's your fault that you're pregnant. I'm not saying you saying that. I'm just saying that what you said kind of triggered some of the things that I've heard within me. And my thing is like, first of all, like, not everybody goes out there with the intention to get pregnant. I don't want to go.
That's not what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying, but I just want to say that just in the vein of my being triggered by what you said, it's like, y'all got to make better decisions because he already a fool. No, how about we teach our boys not to be fools in the first place.
That's my point.
And it's like it's always a thing of, and like I said, I'm not saying you specifically said this, but it's like, well, you know, you got to make better decisions. Well, hell, why can't he make better
He
decisions?
kind of made that statement though, because he said women. I'm holding you accountable for that. I know you well enough to say that that's probably that you aren't going to die on that hill for that. But you did say, like, if a woman knows that a man can't take care of himself, like
I said that's the first sign.
right, exactly. You put the onus on her. I'm just letting you know. But
Well,
but I know your intent is not. It goes both ways.
Yeah, I'm saying it goes both ways, but be aware, ladies, you know, because part of the other problem is that then listen to me. Let me finish before you cut me off.
Okay, I'm sorry. Respect.
Got 1 minute.
Be aware, there's no such thing as common sense, only common lessons taught. So we don't teach this lesson right now, okay? If that man has not learned to take care of himself, I'm not saying that it's your job to teach him, okay? It was his daddy's fault that he didn't teach him how to take care of himself, or his parents' fault. But you can't change him, and you can't make him better. You can't.
So
Let him loose.
So real quick. Usually after all these meetings, after these meetings, we go and have something to eat. We're gonna have a bit to talk about.
Yeah. I know it.
We ready. And Barry,
All right.
we're going to need you to stay awake for the conversation.
No, you don't need, I'm going to lead by example of what I've done in the past and let it go from there. But I want to thank special panelist Takalani, Brother Black, the creative Roy, and I'm your host, Barry, a.k.a. The Dark Knight, and we will see you next time on Barry's Poetic Session, the relationship show. Thank you, everyone.
And see.